Welcome back. Last time we looked at the rooms in Caecilius's house. Today we'll talk about some of the things people did in these rooms and make some general observations about the placement of verbs in Latin sentences. You're looking at a picture of a different house in Pompeii, this one a little better preserved than that of Caecilius. The roof is intact or has been restored, and I think it gives you a better sense of what it would have been like to be inside one of these houses. We're in the atrium looking through the tablinum into the garden in the background. You can see the hole in the roof called the compluvium. You can see the pool in the floor called the impluvium that collected rainwater. The tablinum could be curtained off between these columns. And just to give you a sense of scale, because this is also a very large, imposing house, here's a chair. In the first picture, we see Caecilius sitting in his office, or tablinum. On the table next to him is a lampstand with a detachable oil lamp called a lucerna. It looks like Aladdin's lamp, right? Oil is poured into here. A cloth wick comes through this little spout. When you light that on fire, you can light the room when the curtains are drawn or the sun's not out. On the table in front of Caecilius is the thing that the room is named after. The tablinum is named for the tabulae that were stored there. And a tabula is basically a board that has had a layer of wax applied to it. There's an indentation that contains the wax. The pointy stick Caecilius has in his right hand is called a stylus. He uses that to write words in the wax, and those will stay there until he flips it around and uses the flat end to rub those words away. The ability to reuse these tabulae was the thing that made them so important in the Roman world. Romans didn't possess paper. Paper was invented in China. For formal writing, books, documents, contracts, they imported a reed from Egypt known as papyrus. But this was expensive and could not be reused. So for day-to-day writing, tabulae were essential. You may have made the connection that the Latin word tabula is the source of the English word tablet. We all know what a tablet is. I'm making this presentation on a tablet. It's an iPad. When tech designers were looking for a word to describe these devices that would be smaller than a laptop computer but larger than a cell phone, they thought of the Roman tabulae. And in fact, the first generation of these things, before touchscreen technology had really been perfected, came with a little writing implement known as a stylus that people would constantly lose and have to reorder, right? So tablets. The tablet that I'm making this on has lots of apps. Caecilius's just has two. It has the writing app and it has the erasing app. The model sentences in this section come in pairs, with a sentence telling you where someone is and another sentence explaining what they are doing. And I want you to pay special attention to the placement of the verbs, the action words that we'll come across in this section. We'll begin with number 15. Pater est in tablino. Pater in tablino scribit. Father is in office. Father in office scribit. Now, scribit is a verb. It describes an action. And you can probably guess what that action is if you're familiar with the English words scribe, scribble, script, scripture, or the Spanish verb escribir. Now, I want you to notice that the word est, which means is, does not appear in this second sentence, even though in English we might say the father is writing in the study. In Latin, scribit is all the verb that you need, and it can be used to describe what Caecilius usually does in the office, he writes in there, or what he is doing in there right now. Either way, in Latin, it's just going to say scribit. I also want you to notice the position of the word scribit. It's the last word in the sentence. This is the usual place for a Latin verb to appear. It's what a Roman reader expects. It's how they know the sentence is over. This is not a rule they have to follow, but when they put the verb anywhere else, they're doing so for a reason, as we might place the verb in an English sentence at the very end to fit the rhyme scheme of a song or to create a sense of drama and suspense. I call this the Bon Jovi principle.
I'm a cowboy on a
Tell your dad thanks if you got that reference, and be prepared to move the verb to the place where it sounds natural when we translate a Latin sentence into English. I ride on a steel horse. Caecilius writes in the tablino. Well, when you're not asked to translate, you should just read like a Roman and find out what happens when you get to the end. Our next two sentences involve Metella, who looks kind of mad in this picture. Anyway, Metella is the mother, and so that's how she's identified here. Mater est in atrio. Mater in atrio sedet. Mother is in atrium. Mother in atrium sedet. The only new word here is the verb, and you might be able to guess its meaning from some of its English derivatives. Sedentary, sediment, sedimentary, sedation. The common denominator here is the idea of sitting or settling down. A sedentary lifestyle is one that involves a lot of sitting around. Sediment is material that settles to the bottom of a body of water, forming sedimentary rock. Sedation is the process of settling someone down using chemical means. All these words come from the Latin verb sedet, which simply means sits. So our sentence, mater in atrio sedet, mother in atrium sits, can be reorganized into the English sentence, mother sits in atrium. To make it sound more like real English, you can say, the mother sits in the atrium, or even the mother is sitting in the atrium. But remember that the word est does not occur in this sentence, and that sedet does all the work by itself. Okay, next up we have Quintus, curled up on a couch in the triclinium and enjoying the beverage of his choice. He's the son, so that's how he's described. Filius est in triclinio. Son is in dining room. Filius in triclinio bibit. Son in dining room bibit. Now, bibit means drinks, and it's a good example of how English and Spanish get different kinds of words from Latin. English gets fancy words, scientific words, literary words. Quintus is imbibing a beverage in the dining room. Spanish gets everyday words from Latin. Quintus está bebiendo una bebida. Beber, to drink. Bebida, a drink. Those aren't fancy words in Spanish. He's not imbibing a beverage, he's just drinking a drink. Again, is drinking is an acceptable translation for bibit here, but just remember that the word est is not involved. All right, let's go see what Lucia is doing. Lucia is the daughter, and she's in the garden. Filia est in horto. Filia in horto legit. Daughter in garden, legit. Now, the English derivatives of this Latin verb include legible and illegible, because legit means she reads. If something is legible, it is able to be read. If it's illegible, you can't read it. That little scroll that Lucia is reading is called a liber, and this is the Latin word for a book. When she's done, she'll roll it up and store it in the librarium, the source of the English word library. In number 19, we see Clemens in the bedroom, but he's not identified here by name. Servus est in cubiculo, servus in cubiculo laborat. Right? Slave is in the bedroom, slave in bedroom laborat. If I asked you what he's doing in the picture, you'd probably say he's sweeping, but the Latin verb laborat has a more general meaning. If you know what the English word labor means, you can probably guess that laborat is the Latin verb that means works. A place where any kind of work gets done could be described in Latin as a laboratorium, although in English the word laboratory is usually reserved for a place where scientific experiments are conducted. The English word labor can even be used as a verb, but it sounds a little old-fashioned to say that Clemens labors in the bedroom. In number 20, we see Grumio in the kitchen, although he's identified only as coquus, cook. Now, cook's one of these words in English that can be a noun or a verb. Just add an S. The cook cooks in the kitchen. The same thing happens in Latin, where I can take the word coquus, change the ending, and replace the verb laborat with something more specific. Coquus inculina coquit. This brings us to our last pair of sentences, number 21. Canis est in via dormit. Translation: the dog is in the street. And even without the picture, English words like dormant and dormitory, or the Spanish verb dormir, would probably be enough to tell you what the dog is doing. He's sleeping, right? Because dormit is the Latin verb that means sleeps. Now again, I want you to notice the very specialized use of Latin vocabulary in English. Volcanoes are dormant. College kids sleep in dormitories. Pero todos duermen. Everybody sleeps, because dormir is just the regular everyday Spanish verb that means to sleep. I'm going to use this final sentence to review a couple of translation tips. The Latin sentence says literally, dog in street sleeps. When we translate this sentence, we're going to want to move the verb to where it sounds more natural to us in English. Dog sleeps in street. If the dog doesn't always sleep in the street, but that's just what he's doing right now, we might replace sleeps with is sleeping, keeping in mind that the word est does not appear in the Latin sentence. If we know which dog we're talking about, we might say, the dog is sleeping in the street. If it's just some random dog we've never seen before, we might replace the with a. A dog is sleeping in the street. These are all possible translations for this four-word Latin sentence, but remember, if you're not asked to translate, you can just read it like a Roman, canis in via dormit, and understand what it means. That's all for now. In the next video, we will read a short story about what the dog does when he wakes up. Until then, stay safe.